Welcome back to episode 13 of Fit with Mitch. Ascend strength and conditioning coach Mitch Freeburn here. Over the previous 12 weeks, we've shot a lot of content surrounding the hip, surrounding how players move, absorb force, create force. What I want to address this week is the concept of the shoulder complex and how that relates to our player. If you think of on the ice, the connection to their stick, which they execute these movements, shoot, pass, score goals, is that upper shank and that shoulder complex. The first thing we've talked about lots is that forward flex, that hunched posture. Pertaining to the upper trunk now, what we call this is we always have thoracic flexion, meaning we are hunched forward. When we're not playing the sport, we want to try and get that athlete into a taller posture, into a more neutral curve rather than that really extended kyphosis in that forward head position and shortened anterior structures. What we want to essentially hit here is one, a neurological component which controls posture, and then two, extension-based patterns. Everything in hockey is so closed, rotational, flexion-based, that working the structures on that extension side, that posterior chain, is going to help bring us back to that neutral posture. So the next thing we want to address, the second layer of that thoracic mobility, is the large bony structure on the back. Some of you might know as the scapula. When we have poor scapular positioning, it can really limit how that glenohumeral joint, or what people think of as the shoulder, moves, reacts, produces force based on its connection with that shoulder blade on the back. Finally, the last piece I want to touch on is, we've talked about it in the hip, but now we can use the same terminology in the shoulder, that 3D shoulder complex in that strength. The one thing I want to really pay attention to and alert is, when a lot of people think of shoulder strengthening, we could think of internal-external rotation, which is great, but see where my hand positioning is. It's in tight to the body. Watch hockey players out on the ice. They have to be able to get away, absorb force, produce force from these longer ranges rather than just in here. So that large piece that we like to build upon and progress athletes to as they gain proficiency in here is producing strength in different ranges and to be able to absorb and produce force away from their body in non-predictable positions to, again, help try and increase the robustness of that athlete and to be able to have that durability factor so we can produce force and absorb force over and over again in positions that we're not always necessarily prepared for. So throughout this episode, we've overlaid some video and given you some tools. The first thing we want to ensure is we're trying to create the best posture that we can. That forward hunch position, it's demanded of on the ice. We can't really avoid it. But when we're off, we can work the structures around to try and, again, like we talked about last week, reset to ground neutral. That way our body is as balanced as it can. So when we're doing other sports, other movements, we can get the shoulder in and out of those ranges that we talked about. We then went into scapular stabilization. A lot of people consider the shoulder as just the glenohumeral. The scapula on the back and its articulations with the upper shank have a huge influence on how that upper shank moves in and out of ranges and what can actually physically limit us from getting into positions that we want. Finally, we addressed on the end range strength. Everybody's seen examples of internal external rotation, flexion. All those movements are in towards the body and they're relatively small ranges of motion. For our hockey player in specific, once our athlete can control within those small ranges. We then want to get them out working away from their body, again, trying to best replicate what they're going to have on that ice and improve that tolerance to produce and sustain outputs away from their body in positions that aren't necessarily natural or predictable. Again, so throughout this entire season, we've given you lots of content. My goal as a coach and to educate you guys isn't for you to retain absolutely everything. However, what I can hope from the past 13 episodes is you just gain 1-2 pieces from every one that you can just keep adding to your toolkit so you can make yourself more robust, make yourself more educated no matter where on that spectrum you play any sport beyond the scope of hockey. Again, so with this episode in specific, I hope you took some information in, learned about posture, how posture affects the shoulder and vice versa, and you could use some of this down the road. Stay tuned for episode 14 of Fit with Mitch.